Welcome, everyone. Hi, my name is Suzanne Hume, and I am the Educational Director and founder of cleanearthforkids.org, a nonprofit. I'd love to introduce our fabulous youth board and our fabulous youth board who are still coming on the call. Hi, Catherine. Our fabulous youth board and our very special guest from Columbia Sabin Center, and her name is Hillary Aidun. And we're really excited about the important work that Columbia has done with this deregulation tracker. It was reported in the New York Times, and that's given us a lot of help to be able to look and study about the 100 rollbacks or cuts to environmental protection that have taken place during the Trump administration. So thank you to Columbia, and thank you to Hillary for the amazing work. And thank you to the New York Times for publishing this important information, and also to Harvard University and for their tracker as well. Thank you guys so much for everything. So I'm excited about tonight, and so I will introduce Janice.
Hi everyone, I'm Janice, and we're going to have some amazing people tell you about our 6 teams. Leanna, would you like to start?
Sure, Janice. Hi everyone, my name is Leanna Cortez. I am the team lead for Team 1, which is Climate Action Plans, Renewable Energy and Sustainability. Recently, we've been working on climate curriculum for the state of California, so really excited about all the great work we're doing for that. And we are also working on climate resolutions for school districts and cities. And then I would like to introduce Catherine to tell you all about Team 2.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine. I am part of Team 2, which involves public lands, forests, gardens, plants, and wildlife. We will be planting trees and gardens and protecting public lands, parks, forests, and wildlife. Thank you to the California Air Resources Board, CARB, for the grant to plant trees, put no idling signs that children created near schools, do radio commercials, purchase science equipment, and help us educate students and communities.
Hello, my name is Judith, and I'm part of Team 3. We work to stop air pollution at schools, at our national parks, and in all communities, because kids breathe here. I made no idling signs that will be printed and be placed on metal poles outside of schools to remind drivers to turn their engines off when they are parked. You can join me in making no idling signs or supporting clean air.
Hi everyone, I'm Janice. Water is life, and I'm on Team 4, protecting our drinking water and making sure our drinking water is clean and healthy, keeping oceans healthy, and keeping pollution out of streams and rivers and wetlands. So.
My name is Darren, and I co-lead Team 5. Team 5 works primarily to stop toxic chemicals and pesticides from being used in our communities for the sake of our children, our families, our farm workers, and our environment.
And finally is Team 6. We work for reducing plastics and having zero waste.
Great job, you guys. So important to share all of that great information. Thank you so much. Chelsea, would you like to share with us your contest? We have so many contests, so here's just one. Go ahead.
So social and environmental justice are part of each of our teams. Right now, I am leading a contest or project called These Are the Hands That. And with this contest, we want to show stories and, yes, show stories through the visuals of hands. And yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. So excited about that. Go ahead.
At Clean Up for Kids, we offer many different types of community service. If you are a student watching this, you can earn community service by writing 2 pages of notes based on this webinar with a short summary of what you learned. You can also design and work on projects or apply to do an internship with us. For more information, go to our website, cleanearthforkids.org. We also have many K-12 contests for art, music, writing, presentations, and STEM contests. We also have challenges, such as the Call It Out Challenge, by making a video to call out the pollution of our air, our water, or our public lands. We must call out cuts or rollbacks of environmental protections. We need to use our voices, art, music, writing, and projects to call it out.
Thank you, Janice. The title of tonight's panel discussion is Climate Change Law. We will talk with Hillary Aidun from the Columbia Sabin Center. But first, we will discuss 100 rollbacks or the undoings of protections that are risking our health, our environment, and ultimately our future. You can check out Cleaner for Kids on our website, cleanerforkids.org, for resources, curriculum, petitions, and also follow us on social medias like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then now we would like to, oops, so sorry. I would like to talk about the 100 rollbacks.
Okay, Chelsea, would you like to share the 100 rollbacks for us?
So hello everyone, my name is Chelsea. So on our website, we have a list of 100 rollbacks or cuts of protections for our air, water, our houses, and our parks. This list was provided by New York Times, so thank you very much. Right now, the Trump administration has rolled back on 66 protections of our air, water, public lands, national parks, and wildlife. So there are also 34 more rollbacks still in the process, which makes the list of rollbacks up to 100. Along with our list of rollbacks, we have Columbia and Harvard Law Schools keeping track of our list of protections. Without these protections, our land, our earth, our water, and our lives will be harmed. So at Cleaners for Kids, we're working very hard to keep,
That's great. We're so happy to have you, Chelsea. Chelsea, more to cleanerforkids.org. And so, of course, we want to give everyone great opportunities. She jumped right in and created a contest. These are the hands that she showed you. She actually made the model of the hands, and we're writing social justice stories, and it's amazing. So, of course, we have Columbia Law, Hillary on, and why not just dive in and ask the questions and do a presentation. So we're here with you. We know that you're newer, but we're so excited about all you've learned and all the knowledge you have. So just take the time you need. We're here.
Okay, thank you. So we are working very hard to keep the environment and the health of everyone safe. Thankfully, many other organizations like the Sierra Club, Earth Justice, Food and Water Watch, and Fossil Finders, I believe, and many more states are suing the Trump administrations to help protect our Earth. The health of our people and our future relies on clean air, water, and land. It also relies on people standing up and giving some of their time to help us out.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. I'm so excited to share that the Dakota Access Pipeline, DAPL, has been stopped. This is excellent news. In 2017, the Lakota Sioux were desperate to protect their only water source and invited people to their land to help them protect their water, and people came. Nurses, veterans, everyday people, and Native Americans people from across the United States and the world came to North Dakota to help Native Americans protect their only water source from a pipeline. With the oil spills and pipeline leaks, they needed help. Winter came and veterans and nurses stayed on and camped in tents in freezing temperatures to help Native Americans protect their water. The people there protecting the water faced water cannons shot at them in freezing temperatures, They faced rubber bullets, militarized police, and security for the pipeline that the Native Americans called the Black Snake. A judge ordered this pipeline to be halted because an environmental impact statement was not completed. The judge spoke of the harm done. Tonight we celebrate. Another piece of excellent news is another pipeline has been stopped. The Dominion and Duke Energy canceled the Atlantic Coast Pipeline project altogether. This 600-foot pipeline from West Virginia to North Carolina would have moved natural gas. Thank you for helping to stop this pipeline. Signing petitions, writing letters, making phone calls, posting on social media, and letting people know what is happening made all the difference. Thank you. This pipeline, like the others, would have endangered our water, air, wildlife because of pipeline leaks. The Atlantic Pipeline was planned to be 600 miles of piping used to move natural gas from West Virginia to North Carolina. Also on Monday, the Supreme Court upheld to freeze on a key permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, delaying the start of construction until at least 2021. 3 victories happened this week for clean air, clean water, keeping our public health safe and our wildlife safe. 3 pipelines were stopped.
Thank you so much, Denise. That's such good news, and it's a good way to start this webinar. I think it's really important to include all of the victories as well as things that we still have to work on. So one of the things that we still have to work on are the rollbacks. And so one of them is that the Trump administration has loosened a rule designed to limit toxic emissions from major industrial polluters. And so this modifies Section 112 of the Clean Air Act. And essentially, the EPA is required to regulate facilities that emit at least 1 toxin on a list of 189 pollutants. And these chemicals can include benzene, dioxin, and lead. So these are pretty hefty chemicals that they are looking at. And so these facilities are categorized into 2 categories, major source and area source. Major source are the people or are the facilities that are emitting the most toxins. So at least 10 tons of one toxin or at least 25 tons of multiple toxins per year. And anything below that threshold is categorized as an area source. And if you're wondering, a stationary source is just any facility that can or is emitting pollutants. So under this section of the Clean Air Act, originally once a major source is able to reduce its emissions below that threshold and become an area source, it is still categorized or held under the standards or held to the standards of a major source. So they're still required to continue to reduce their emissions and keep the methods that they use to reduce those emissions in place. And they are also, there's a lot more oversight. And then now what they've done is eliminated that. So that was called the once in, always in rule. And now if you move below the major source category, you're allowed to be categorized as an area source and regulated as such. So they're no longer held to those high standards, and they're allowed to increase their emissions as long as they don't go up to a major source. So this is a really significant setback to our air pollution or our air quality, because now they're basically allowing companies to continue to pollute the air with little to no regulation because of this loophole. And this was in 2018, but since then the Clean Air Act has been continuing to be weakened. For example, recently they have declined to put a limit on PM 2.5, which is a type of particulate matter, or as you may know it as soot. And its levels have increased 5.5% since the end of 2016. And a recent study by Harvard stated that an increase of 1 microgram per cubic meter of PM 2.5 is associated with an 8% increase in the COVID-19 death rate. So this is significant not only to public health, but to our climate crisis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's such important information, and thank you for the graphic. Judith, are you going to share with us about MATS?
Yes. Okay. I will be talking about rollback number 3 on the New York Times deregulation tracker. Sorry. So as you might know, MATS stands for Mercury and Air Toxic Standards. This environmental protection protected all children, all families, saving up to 11,000 lives each year, along with $90 billion. This prevented causes of breathing problems, heart and asthma attacks, cancer, and other illnesses. What's devastating is that this regulation was settled on being rolled back on June 23rd, 2020. This would greatly affect pregnant women, babies, and young children because mercury affects their developing brains, where exposure can actually lead to a loss of IQ. The EPA took away this environmental protection. Andrew Wheeler, the head of the EPA and a former coal lobbyist, claimed that reducing toxic pollution from power plants isn't worth the cost to industry, which is surprising because despite all the lives this rule has, okay, yeah, okay, I just got him.
That this rule has taken.
Yeah, sorry. Burning coal is bad because when released, it includes dangerous metals such as mercury, arsenic, and lead. It releases large amounts of carbon dioxide, a primary greenhouse gas, into the air, increasing climate change, and is also linked to asthma attacks, heart problems, and other diseases. This coal also poisons our soil, our air, and our water, affecting all of us. This especially affects people who live within the area of these coal power plants, such as like neighborhoods, including homes, churches, parks, and parks. And our so as I mentioned in last week's panel discussion, 68% of African Americans live within 30 miles of a power plant. So I believe we all need to work together to demand that the EPA should restore the MATS protection today. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous.
Judith is amazing, as all of these panelists are. So thank you so much for this important information. Judith, I just know that if I went out into this city and asked 150 people if they knew as much about coal and deregulation and environmental topics and clean water and clean air, they just wouldn't have the information and background you have. And you're a junior getting ready to be a senior. So nothing to be nervous about. You know, you're amazing and a really nice person and a great artist. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judith, for that. So the next thing to talk about in terms of rollbacks is that the Trump administration has proposed limiting pesticide application buffer zones that are intended to protect farm workers and bystanders from accidental exposure. This one is in progress, but if it's passed, it will have very severe consequences for the health of people involved in farm work and pesticide application. So there are 4 elements of this proposal. 3 of them are pretty significant. The 4th one is just adding clarifying language, so it's not very relevant. But the first one is reducing the application exclusion zone to fit within the farm owner's property. So originally, the application exclusion zones were just 25 or 100 feet, but now if that radius extends beyond the property, you're no longer liable for pesticide exposure for pedestrians or people who live right near the farms. And so those people are no longer protected under our law, specifically the WPS or Agricultural Worker Protection Standard. The second element is that farm owners, immediate family, and other non-employees are exempt from the AEZ requirement. So this could be like utility workers, the wife, children, or the husband. And basically, The reasoning for this is that if they feel safe, they should be allowed to stay inside because it's more convenient, but in reality, any exposure to pesticides is not safe. So even if their judgment is that they're safe, they're still being subjected to this pesticide, and they may not be educated on this issue enough to take that initiative and leave the premises. The third element is that they will remove spray quality and droplet size and volume, median diameter as criteria for determining the radius of the AEZ. And this basically will just simplify the qualifications for 100-foot or 25-foot AEZ, but this could have consequences like having pesticides that originally had a 100-foot buffer zone now having a 25-foot buffer zone. So people who were between 25 and 100 feet away that were protected originally are now subject to exposure. So all of these elements combined just show that a lot less people are being protected from pesticide exposure and all the health risks associated. The next rollback that Trump administration has done is narrow the scope of a law mandating safety assessments for potentially toxic chemicals. I talked about this in a previous webinar specifically relating to asbestos, but this has happened for at least the first 10 chemicals that they are reevaluating for health risks and regulations. They are required to do this based on a 2016 decision regarding the Toxic Substances Control Act, or TSCA. And so they've basically primarily focused on direct exposure for the vast majority of these chemicals in the vast majority of these studies. So as we talked about before, asbestos they did not consider legacy uses, which basically that means asbestos that's lingering in homes, schools, and other buildings. And this is what poses the biggest threat to American health, because this is what is the biggest exposure risk. And so by eliminating this from their study, they have severely underestimated the consequences of not regulating asbestos. And they also narrowed the definition of asbestos in their study. So not only did they take out certain uses, but they also took out certain types of asbestos from their study. The second one is perchloroethylene. And that is, if you're wondering, it's a dry cleaning solvent, but it's also found in greases, adhesives, sealants, paints, and coatings. Paint coatings. And they did not consider ambient air, pathways from commercial or industrial stationary sources, or from waste incineration. They did not consider drinking water or groundwater, any types of waste in landfills, or biosolids, which are basically organic waste that's used as fertilizers. So obviously, if these chemicals are used as cleaning agents, a lot of them might be very harsh to use as fertilizers, or to use in our drinking water, or to breathe in our air. So by eliminating these and basically passing them off to other branches of the government for them to determine, they have just showed that they are not considering human health to its fullest extent in these studies. Luckily, in November 2019, they were kept in check by a court of appeals that ruled that the agency must widen its scope to consider full exposure risks. So hopefully they will continue to do that in the future. But for now, it's just important to note that they have tried to do this in the past.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Darren, for that information. Good evening, everyone. My name is Neem, and I'll be talking to you about chlorpyrifos. And chlorpyrifos are a neurotoxic pesticide and are associated with the neurodevelopmental harms in children. And this is one of the 100 rollbacks which the Trump administration has gone through with, which I will discuss as we go. Specifically, the prenatal exposures that have been linked include a reduced IQ, attention disorders, delayed motor development, amongst many others. This pesticide has been used since 1965 on crops such as corn, soybeans, wheat, and a variety of different fruits and vegetables, as well as cotton. And even more surprisingly, it has often been used on golf courses. So in November of 2016, the EPA released a revised human health risk assessment for chlorpyrifos, and they confirmed that no use of this pesticide was safe, no use at all. And so later, more recently, in July 2019, the Ninth Circuit issued for the EPA to finally decide on the ban, whether to ban it or not. And on the day of the deadline, the EPA announced that it would continue to allow the use of this pesticide. And that's, of course, despite numerous studies and organizations warning against it. Now, luckily, the European Union states such as California, New York, Oregon, and Hawaii have banned this harmful pesticide, but it's not enough. And so it's also important to note that just this year in February, the corporation Corteva, a large manufacturer of chlorpyrifos, announced that they will begin to phase out production of this pesticide. However, the chemical is still being made, and we must all demand that this pesticide be banned nationwide. It's incredibly harmful, and something needs to be done. So with that, I would like to thank you all for being here, and I will now introduce Catherine.
Hello, everyone. I will be talking about logging and the Endangered Species Act. Trump administration aims to ramp up drilling in national forests. Last year, the U.S. Forest Service proposed updating, clarifying, and streamlining regulations that could change how the agency handles oil and gas leasings across almost 200 million acres of national forests and grasslands. The intent of these changes would be to decrease regulatory restrictions and to promote oil and gas production by allowing industry to produce more quickly. It is clear that they want faster permits for the oil gas industry, which ignores many public concerns. The Forest Service's September proposal of last year is called the Federal Register and portrays a slow and energy development, and critics are worried by the proposal's written intent to combine the Bureau of Land Management so that operators have one simplified permitting system, but the two agencies are not supposed to be aligned, says Kristen Davis, staff attorney with Southern Environmental Law Center. This change to mold the two agencies would cut the environmental review process, such as a change would eliminate the Forest Service's ability to control what happens on the land it is supposed to manage, as well as removing the public from the process. And this leads to increasing the rate of these sales by reducing environmental review. Each agency has its own roles and responsibilities that are set by Congress, by law, and cannot be changed by regulation. Oil logging, mining, and grazing will be the priorities of national forests and grasslands with sped up environmental oversight. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue told the U.S. Forest Service this year. His memo announced a blueprint for reforms that refocuses the Forest Service to produce products and services from the 193 million acres of forest, grasslands, and wildernesses across areas it oversees. Many national forests surround national parks and keep wilderness areas that are protected from all forms of development. The largest national forest, Alaska's Tonegrass, is the hemisphere's largest coastal temperate rainforest. The Forest Service has targeted it for new logging projects. Purdue also announced an effort to expand access to national forests and make it easier for forest users to obtain permits for recreational activities. The memo, which mentions hunting and fishing, did not specify how access would be expanded or what permits would be made easier to obtain. The details and implementation will hopefully follow soon, but the political will to move forward cannot be underestimated. I will now talk about the weakening of the Endangered Species Act. The author of U.S. Significantly Weakens Endangered Species Act, Lisa Friedman, states the Trump administration announces it would change how the Endangered Species Act is applied, significantly weakening the nation's bedrock conservation law and making it harder to protect wildlife from the multiple threats posed by climate change. The new rules would make it easier to remove species from the endangered list and weaken protections for threatened species. The classification one step below endangered. And for the first time, regulators would be allowed to conduct economic assessments, for instance, estimating low revenue from a prohibition on logging in a critical habitat when deciding whether a species warrants protection. This would also make it more difficult to collect data on the effects of climate change and wildlife. Friedman states. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very important information that you're passing along. Really important that we all get involved. We understand the way that all of these things are connected. We know that we must have these soils to absorb carbon. We need our forests to help us filter pollution and support biodiversity. So very important. And so we're excited to work on projects with the UN. Excited for next June, right? World Environment Day. We're already planning for that. So excited. And all of that. So fun. Okay. All right. So Chelsea would like to talk about the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the US is the second largest greenhouse emitter in the world. It is also the largest historical emitter. So America's approval of the Paris Climate Agreement signaled our intentions to cooperate globally in reducing emissions and encouraging others to do the same. So withdrawing from the accord would undermine America's credibility as a leader in climate change, science, and actions. Also, it would jeopardize US's emissions reductions commitment. Right now, US is the only country to formally start withdrawal proceedings, which will become effective on November 4th, a day after US elections. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great and important information, right? The US is supposed to be a leader. Alice, would you like to talk to us about methane and climate?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chelsea. I will be talking about rollbacks 5, 6, 13, and 21. So let's begin. 5 is a rollback. So methane is a harmful greenhouse gas because it's more potent than carbon dioxide, which means it traps 30% more heat in our atmosphere. Due to a new rollback, companies no longer have to report their methane emissions. The Trump administration has made clear that they are aiming to revoke many Obama-era environmental laws, this being one of them. Methane emissions not being monitored as closely is a major step backward for climate activists. And for rollback 6, the Trump administration revised and partially repealed a rule limiting methane emissions on public lands, including intentional venting and flaring from drilling operations. And what flaring is it's a controlled burning of natural gas produced in association with crude oil in the course of routine crude oil and natural gas production operations. And venting is controlled release of unburned gases directly into the atmosphere. Because of this new revision, now only a small percentage of methane has to be mandatorily captured at drilling locations. And on to rollback 13. The EPA rolled back a rule that required operators of refrigeration equipment to have leak detection and maintenance programs for hydrofluorocarbons. This new rule revokes a 2016 regulation that supported the replacement of HFCs with other refrigerants. Furthermore, the EPA's changes means appliances with at least 50 replacements of HFCs will not be required to report leak inspections on unrepaired appliances or maintenance of previous records. HFCs are a set of chemicals referred to as climate superpollutants because they are such a powerful greenhouse gas, being 100 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. and Rollback 21, the Environmental Protection Agency also removed federal regulation policies that require oil and gas companies to install technology to detect and fix methane leaks from wells, pipelines, and storage facilities. Many clean energy companies have openly expressed their opposition in regards to these rollbacks because unfixed leaks will spew more and more greenhouse gases into our atmosphere, furthering the warming of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of the important work there. And we're really excited about the great science projects that you're working on, STEM projects. We have some contests, cleanearthforkids.org. You saw Chelsea's hands. We have music, art, writing, so many contests. So we're so excited about that. And thank you so much for being here with us. It's my birthday, and this is such a great birthday gift to be here with you. And I'm so proud of the Youth Board and all they've done, and so grateful to Columbia University, Harvard, the New York Times. I'm grateful for Friends and all of your work. I love our interns and all of you are so amazing. We're super happy. We've got a great social justice commissioner, Jamie Washington, who was a fellow teacher. We taught together for many years. And so we're excited to have her with us. And so it's all about coming together and building skills and having fun and doing something positive. So we hope that you'll join us on Clean Earth for Kids. So yeah, lots to do, lots of teams and fun things to do. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to introduce Jamie.
Okay. Thank you again for that introduction, Suzanne. I am Jamie Washington, the Social Justice Commissioner, and I am going to just basically say that these 100 rollbacks that the Trump administration have put into effect are detrimental to the environment. Not only are we fighting for environmental justice, we're fighting for social justice because it's so important to protect women who are pregnant, children, our youth, and everyone in our poor communities. Now, number 48, rollback 48, that involves flood standards for federal infrastructure. These projects are supposed to make sure that people live away from the sea level rises in their communities. And one problem with that is when the sea level rises and it's in the area of a home or apartments that are being built, most of the people in the community don't know that, and they are going to live in homes that are in the path of the sea level rise. So it's been revoked. People have no way of knowing where they live. Regulation 49, it weakened the environmental review process for federal infrastructure projects. 25, Regulation 25. This involves the comment proposal. There is a way that people in the community can comment on the regulations. The problem is when you comment on a regulation, you have to be a professional college level writer to do this. Your job is to persuade the EPA person reading your paper about whether this regulation should go away or it's harmful, and you have to state your case. This probably won't happen with some people in the poor communities. They aren't confident enough to write a college level paper. They don't know where to go to talk about the regulations that are happening in their communities. They feel hopeless. They feel helpless. And that's something that needs to be taken care of. Now, NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act, and that was necessary so that there's accountability for federal agencies to evaluate environmental effects and their actions. So as I said, social justice is related to environmental justice, and people of color will most certainly be impacted.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for everything you do for Clean for Kids and for leading our Social Justice Commission and for all the knowledge that you bring. It's really important to just discuss the connections between environmental justice and social justice as they are very interconnected.
They are.
So thank you so much. So as I mentioned earlier, tonight we will be talking about climate law with Hillary Aidun of the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law at Columbia University. So Hillary, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be with you. I'm just really moved and inspired and impressed by the work that you all are doing. And as I said earlier, especially the youth board here are just so far ahead where I was in high school. I'm really inspired by what you're doing and excited to see what you do with the rest of your careers. So thank you for hosting me.
Of course. So I guess I'll just kick off the conversation with a few questions. So I'm sure also people in the audience are also curious, what inspired you to pursue climate law specifically, and how did you end up at this Sabin Center?
Thank you. So like you all, I cared a lot about climate change in high school. I learned about climate change in an environmental science class and just thought it was the issue of our time, and I still do. And so I wanted to become part of the solution. And as you all know, climate change is an environmental issue in that it's causing harm to our natural world, but it's also a humanitarian and a social justice and a health and an economic issue because it will drive incidence of disease and increase hunger and contribute to could lead to conflicts, will lead to sea level rise that affects people's health. And as you all know, if we don't take ambitious action to reduce greenhouse gases as quickly as possible, we have really difficult scenarios ahead of us with respect to a whole host of issues. And so because climate change impacts communities and the environment and people over the world in all of those ways, I decided that was the issue I wanted to devote my life to. And so I went to college and studied political science because I thought policy and governmental action would be part of the solution, and ultimately decided to go to law school after seeing the powerful combination of different types of advocacy, including the type of organizing and awareness building that you all do when combined with law as a tool. And so I'm now a climate law fellow at the Sabin Center, which is an organization at Columbia Law School. We study and develop and implement legal tools to address climate change in a number of different ways. And we work both at the domestic and international level. And it's been really wonderful to get to learn about all of the creative ways that we can use the law to get at this problem.
Thank you. That's so inspiring. So speaking, a lot of what we talked about tonight included Columbia's deregulation tracker. And so could you kind of debrief us on the mission and the purpose of the tracker?
Sure. So the Sabin Center started the climate regulation tracker when the Obama administration started issuing rules to regulate greenhouse gases and take other actions to address climate change. And so the tracker, the regulation tracker, documented all of those actions that the administration took, the Environmental Protection Agency and some of the other agencies that you all have talked about, the Department of Interior, Department of Energy, and so on, to address climate change. Then when President Trump came into office and started cutting back those regulations, we created the deregulation tracker to monitor what the administration was doing to roll back the actions that the government had previously taken to protect the climate. And so the purpose of the deregulation tracker is to keep the spotlight on what is being done at the federal government level with respect to rules that affect the climate, and also serve as a resource to people like you who might want to engage with the process, submit public comments, attend hearings, and make sure that your voices are heard. And so it's a way to make sure that members of the public have access to all of that information.
Yeah, it's a great resource. I do recommend everyone in the audience check it out. We use it all the time as well as other trackers, and it's honestly very helpful, like you said, to keep a spotlight on everything. So we really appreciate all the work you guys are doing.
That's so good to hear. Thank you.
Of course. So before I ask the next question, which is in regards to a blog entry you wrote, I will be discussing a little bit about these two rollbacks that kind of connect to the article to kind of provide a background knowledge to the audience. So the first rollback I'm going to be talking about is the weakening of greenhouse gas standards for passenger cars and light trucks. So in March 31st of this year, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and NHTSA released a final rule called the Safer, Affordable, Fuel Efficient, or SAFE Vehicles Rule for 2021 to 2026, cars and light trucks. So the rule prior to this one required that transportation departments and planners track tailpipe emission changes. This is that they also set reduction targets for CO2 emissions, and they create reports surrounding this. However, this new SAFE rule actually repeals that and makes it not required anymore, which is obviously very dangerous for the health of our planet and the people, as well as there's a lot of connections to respiratory issues with the inhale of CO2 gases and like other emissions and so forth. So that was the first rollback that kind of connects to the second rollback, which the second rollback is what connects to also tailpipe emissions, and it's the revoking of California's power to set stricter tailpipe emission standards than the federal government itself. So California is known for its rather ambitious and robust emission standards and their kind of their climate regulations. And this one was no different. California wanted to set emission standards that were better than the ones that are provided from the federal government in the previous rollback. However, the EPA, that is currently run by a coal lobbyist, which is terrible just to say, they have actually taken action to revoke California's authority to do so under this, which is odd because in 2013, the EPA actually granted California the waiver to provide these advanced regulations. However, that was just recently revoked, and now a lot of people are fighting for the ability to have higher greenhouse gas standards in their own states. So now with that background for everyone, I just wanted to ask Hillary, recently you wrote a blog entry regarding the movement of concerned scientists fighting to support California's power that I just mentioned to set climate positive emission standards. So could you briefly talk about this movement and its importance and how it connects back to the two rollbacks I briefly mentioned?
Sure, thank you for that explanation. So as Leanna explained, there are two related actions that were recently taken. One was the federal government's weakening of federal greenhouse gas emission standards for passenger vehicles, and the other was revoking California's authority to have its own greenhouse gas emission standards for cars. And so what's happening right now is that there's a lawsuit ongoing to challenge the EPA's action revoking California's authority to implement its own greenhouse gas emission standards for cars. And that is a lawsuit called Union for Concerned Scientists versus the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is another agency that has taken a related action, which is where the lawsuit gets its name. And so my organization, on behalf of coalitions of local governments, filed a brief in support of this lawsuit because obviously California is impacted by this action because it can no longer implement its own greenhouse gas standards if the action is allowed to stand. But people, local governments, states, communities all over the country are impacted by any action that frustrates efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions because obviously they're all affected by climate change. And the other thing that's important to know about this is that once California, so let me zoom out a little bit, under the Clean Air Act in general, the EPA, as you know, has the authority to regulate pollution from cars. And in general, states can't implement their own regulations on pollution from cars. California has an exception because, as you all know, being in California, in part because there are so many cars in California, the state has historically battled a lot of pollution and has been regulating pollution from cars since before the federal government. So California can seek permission from the EPA to implement its own standards, which is why it had its own greenhouse gas standards in existence before the EPA withdrew that authority. Once California decides to set its own standards, assuming those are at least as protective of the environment, and California can show that it has a need for those standards, other states can decide whether to follow the federal standards issued by the federal government or California standards. So that's just a little background to the next thing I wanted to say about this, which is that 12 other states had adopted California's greenhouse gas standards. And so it's not just California that's affected by this for that reason too, because now those states can't continue to follow California's lead in reducing greenhouse gas emissions from cars. And of course, another part of this that's really important to remember is that, as you all talked about earlier, there are many types of pollution that are harmful, like particulate matter or soot, which, as we discussed earlier, can cause very serious illness, in addition to pollutants that can create smog. And so both types of pollutants are also associated with transportation. And so any action that rolls back regulation of those pollutants is also really harmful to health all over the country. And so those were some of the points that we highlighted in our submission in support of this challenge, because it's really important, of course, to California and the other states that wanted to follow California standards, but it's also really important to local governments, to cities that are working to protect their residents from different types of pollution, climate change, soot, and smog, and are going to have a harder time now that California's regulations cannot be in place because of the sort of cascading impacts of that rollback that will take place across the country. And so that's some of what we tried to highlight. And the other thing is, as you all also discussed earlier, as we've seen, communities of color and low-income communities tend to disproportionately bear the burden of climate change impacts and the harms of other types of pollution like smog and soot. And so that's an important issue as well, that it's really important that we pay attention to and that the administration pay attention to. So those are some of the issues that have been raised in this litigation, which will be unfolding over the next few months. So I encourage you all to follow it if you're interested in these issues and to see where it goes.
And I just want to say thank you so much for your submission and support of that union and for everything you guys do, and for also making the connection on how it also will impact other states, and kind of giving us more information about how California's set standard could also be used by other states, because I know I was still a little bit iffy about that information. So I'm really glad that you cleared that up and also provided that information to our audience. So now I will pass on the torch, you can say, to Judith to ask some questions.
And thank you, Leanna, for your explanation, because it's a very complicated lawsuit and a very complicated set of laws. And especially, even for a lawyer, all of this is complicated. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to study and engage with it.
Of course, thank you so much.
Okay, so I was just wondering if you have any advice you can provide on fighting these rollbacks, and how can everyone get involved?
Thank you for that question. So as you all know, before an agency issues a new rule or repeals an existing rule, the agency first has to make a proposal, and then the public has an opportunity to comment. So you can write, you can submit written comments, or sometimes there are hearings, especially now, either by phone or video conference. And so those are all opportunities to engage with the process and make sure that your voice is heard. You can also call your representatives and make sure they know that you're concerned about these issues. To the extent you can do so safely, you can organize and attend rallies and other events that make it clear that there's public support for these environmental protections. And also, I think, honestly, what you all do, which is educating yourselves and your communities, raising awareness in creative ways through art, through contests, all of that is critically important because you're reaching a lot of people and expanding the base of knowledge and the number of people who are engaged with these issues, and that's critically important as well. So I commend you for what you're doing, and I would just say keep doing what you're doing, and keep your eyes peeled for those opportunities to get your voices heard, get into the record, your comments, your phone calls, however you can engage with the process.
Thank you for that answer. And I also want to ask, do you have any advice for specifically aspiring lawyers or anyone interested in climate law in general?
Definitely. So I would say I knew that I was interested in law school throughout college, and I did not go straight to law school after college because it's a really big commitment and I wanted to make sure it was right for me. And so I actually worked at an organization called the Center for Biological Diversity, which does a lot of legal work, and I worked very closely with lawyers, but because I wasn't a lawyer at that time, I was an organizer, planning rallies, organizing petitions, doing the sort of work that some of the work that you all do. A lot of the work you're doing now is way more sophisticated than anything I was doing. But I had the chance to work very closely with environmental lawyers and climate lawyers and see what that was like. And that confirmed for me that it was right for me. So I would say, take your time, try different things, see if you like the law, figure out ways to engage with the law that before you go to law school to make sure that's right for you. And if it is, that's wonderful. And I think you all would make incredible lawyers. And I would say, I think if you have the chance to study some science in college, that's a really good thing to have some background with, because a lot of what we do is translating science for the public and for other lawyers and for judges, and it's really important to be able to have a handle on that. And I think, exactly what you're doing, work with organizations, volunteer, do internships, whatever you can to sort of just get exposure to different types of work so that you can develop your skills and see what you like.
Thank you so much, Hillary. It was wonderful speaking to you and learning more about what you do at Columbia and how to get more involved, and also just all the advice you gave us. Amazing. A lot of people in the comments are saying that you rock and that you're doing great things, and that they're really inspired by you. So just wanted to say thank you for that. And
thank
you
all rock.
Thank you so much. And just wanted to say thank you to all my fellow youth board members and Just Clean for Kids members for talking tonight. I mean, this is a really important discussion to talk about these rollbacks, as a lot of them are going underneath the radar. A lot of people don't know what's happening because we're in the midst of a pandemic, and a lot of other social justice issues are also occurring at the same time. But if we kind of take a minute to step back and kind of look at everything and see how everything interconnects, I think it makes it a little bit easier to understand and to kind of what angle we can take to solving a lot of these issues. So I just want to leave you guys on that note and thank everyone for attending. It was lovely hearing everyone talk and everyone getting educated, and it was just an amazing experience. So thank you all. And happy birthday to Suzanne.
Happy birthday, Suzanne.
Thank you, guys. What a great birthday present. Thank you so much, Hillary. And we're so inspired by your important work that you're doing, and so excited to work with you guys at the Columbia Sabin Center, or Sabin Center. Let me try again, Sabin Center. So thank you so much for your important work, for putting down the foundational pieces. And thank you also, Harvard has also done that important work with their tracker. So Columbia and Harvard, of course, there you have it, right? And New York Times. So thank you so much for that, because without that, we would not be able to organize our information. So that has been really, really important. And so what we're doing is we're going the next step to make sure that the 100 rollbacks aligns with curriculum. And so that we can take those rollbacks, and Jamie and I are teachers, Jay Kloppenstein on our board, teacher for years and decades. So we have teachers in many states, and we're really excited about our interns all over the country. Now with, we started so small, we're really excited to take this and make sure that all the information is accessible to people, students, middle school students, even fourth grade students. As a former fourth grade student, John is typing away, so I'm saying, hey, as a former fourth grade teacher, a kindergarten teacher as well, but thinking about that, a lot of this information is so important, and we can be able to, or we can boil this down and have graphic organizers and everything there that's needed, and then hook it, because we want to make sure to your tracker and the blog and all of those sorts of things, because it's really important to give students of all levels opportunities to engage in the information. So I know that, going back to as the fourth grade teacher again, I know that students, the recent blog post that you just did, that would be accessible to many students, and even in elementary school. So I'm very happy. I'm so happy to have tools that are accessible and excited. We work every day to make sure to bring this great information to people. And so, I was poisoned by pesticides. So tonight's conversation about the buffer zone, when Darren was talking about that, and then talking about the process, I'll just tell you. So even with the privilege that I recognize that I have, things were very difficult for me to make changes. And so I started Clean Earth for Kids. There's someone above me making noise. Sorry about that, if you can hear it. Anyway, so we are now renting. We had to move from our home because we could not endure any more, terrible toxic pesticides. And we had the privilege and the financial ability to be able to leave where others are still there. And we're fighting that actively. And so thank you, shout out to Cadence, and shout out to everybody who's not here right now on this call, Kevin, and so many of you, thank you so much. But we are actively working on that and identifying the very top toxic pesticides that we need banned, that are legal here. And so when Darren was talking about this, this is very important. And the review process, I'll just tell you, it's difficult. It's difficult for me. Well, I go in, I'm a teacher. I've been a trainer in a school district, but I go in and, we're trying to make change, and it's difficult. So to get into those meetings, not everything is publicized, like on websites. Are the city council members or county or state, are they going to go along with what we need to happen? Or are they too friendly with people using things in the industry? So we have faced this ourselves. So we are going through the process. I can only imagine how difficult it is for someone without experience, with less education, and all of that, to be able to fight these rollbacks and be involved in the process. So we have to make sure that it's accessible to all people. So that's why we want our materials translated into multiple languages. We want youth to be able, and all people to be able to speak out and show these are the steps. Like if you're going to attend a meeting, these are the things to do. This is who to contact, and some coaching that's free. So it's really important that people have this information. And so again, we would not have been able to get as far as we have without your foundational work and all the important things you do. And we rely on that because we need case law. We need to look at that and see how it all fits together and what's going on. And we need to know when we lay our heads on our pillow at night that there's somebody out there who's looking it up and making sure to keep us safe. So from the bottom of our hearts, I know I speak for everyone here at Clean Earth for Kids, and the people not pictured on here are, again, our fabulous consultants, Dr. Emily Catalan, Julie Morissette, Dr. Sarah Jean Royer, Jay Kloppenstein, and so many others, Jim Wong, so many other fabulous people. Thank you so much. But this is really important to us. We have faced this adversity, and we need your help. So Thank you so much